Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Smuckage with another action figure unboxing, and as you can tell, we've got ourselves a Marvel Legends line to crack open. Now, first and foremost, this is not this is a recent but not new line. I believe this line was actually released, I want to say, about a year or so ago. The Apocalypse figure is actually fairly new, but the rest of them, like I said, were released about a year or so ago, and it's all figures from Marvel's Age of Apocalypse storyline. So what we're going to do is we will start. This is actually going to be something kind of, trying something new things out. So, okay. Alrighty. That's a little better. So we'll start off with, well, Apocalypse. This was one of the Hasbro Pulse direct market Legends figures. This is, I also think, the second time we've had a this is the second Age of Apocalypse version of Apocalypse action figure-wise. The first one being way back in the 90s during when Toy Biz had the Marvel license, and they actually did an entire wave of Age of Apocalypse X-Men figures. So unlike MODOK, who is kind of similarly done, Apocalypse is already put together, so we don't have to build him. Sugar Man, well, that's another story. So, for those unaware of Age of Apocalypse, the Age of Apocalypse story was an X-Men. I'm loath to call it a crossover because it's not. While events from each individual book did carry over into the other, did affect the other titles, it wasn't like a full-blown thing where you had to read all of them. I mean, it helped. Don't get me wrong. It helped to get the full story if you read all the titles. But yeah. So the basic idea was that Legion, Professor X's son, who has dissociative personality disorder, traveled back in time to kill Magneto because the way he saw it, if Magneto was dead, then Xavier could, be a dad to Legion. However, the point he went back when Xavier and Magneto were still friends, and Xavier sacrificed himself for Magneto, causing Legion to cease to exist, as well as 3 of the X-Men who went back in time to stop him. This caused the Mccoy crystal to expand across the universe, and we got the Age of Apocalypse. Basically, Apocalypse launched an assault on the world 20 years earlier. He'd managed to bring to his side various mutants, including, for example, among his lieutenants were Cyclops and Havoc, Cannonball, North Star and Aurora, the Beast, as we'll actually see later in this unboxing. Whereas the X-Men were led by Magneto, who, as his friend was dying in his arms, agreed to, try and make Charles's dream a reality. But anyway, so yeah. Another interesting side point. Two Hero Hook sets that have been X-Men focused had Age of Apocalypse based chase figure groupings, and there have been additional Age of Apocalypse figures done either in other sets as well as convention exclusives. None of them, to date, have been of him, and his cape just fell off. That's why we say no capes, right? No, actually we stay at capes here. we somewhat stand capes on this channel. They look cool. Alright, so let's get good old Apocalypse out of his plastic packaging of doom. We've got ourselves an additional hand, as well as an additional head, scowling rather than with his mouth open. We also have a skull, which appears to be normal size. Yeah, it's a bit smaller than his head. And not like, you know, maybe it's just... No, it appears to be like a normal skull of a normal sized person. Apocalypse, after all, has been, you know, larger. So, alright, then we've got his cape. Okay, okay, the cape goes, alright, so... The cape goes in here. Alright, I dig it. You can hold the skull. That's kind of neat. I might be misremembering, but I thought even in Age of Apocalypse he had those weird tubings. Maybe not. But yeah, we got a spare left hand, which is in a fist rather than open. And, like I said, a scowly head. And so... Alright, let's move on to the rest of the figures. We will start off, actually, with... Jean Grey. So, Jean Grey in the Age of Apocalypse was, you know, she started... Her story is very, you know, she's still a, you know, member of the X-Men. However, since Cyclops was one of sided with Apocalypse, well, the whole Jean Grey Cyclops love affair wasn't as big of a part of the Age of Apocalypse. I mean, it still was, just differently. The circumstances were extremely different. In fact, she and Wolverine were something of a couple. And so, after the X-Men's base was attacked by Apocalypse and his forces, which included the external Gideon, Jean was among those taken captured, was taken prisoner, and the Scarlet Witch was killed. However, Wolverine didn't want to leave, was not going to simply resign Jean to being a prisoner of Apocalypse, where she would likely be experimented on or brainwashed or one of who knows how many other less than savory outcomes. Basically, bad shit was going to happen to her. Wolverine knew it, and so Wolverine left the X-Men for the express purpose of rescuing Jean. This, when he arrived, in the States, this rescue Jean, he found her in the clutches of Scott Summers, known to be one of Apocalypse's enforcers. It would, of course, turn out that Cyclops was experiencing a change of heart and had decided to. It was trying to help Jean escape. In fact, the ugh, yeah, these. Oh man, her ankle joints are stiff. So are her shoulder joints. Ooh, so is her shoulder joint. Oof. Neck isn't. But we'll take a quick look at the figure. So you might notice that she has a facial tattoo on over her left eye. That was a common thing that would happen to mutants that had been captured captured or even raised by Apocalypse. Basically, being in the pits, as they were generally referred to, would generally lead to having, being marked as such. Now, of course, Wolverine was unaware that Cyclops was helping her, and so the two of them got into a bit of a fight. Right, I know. Wolverine and Cyclops fighting over Jean Grey, that never happens. Ever. Especially not at points after she was, dead, when she was, dead. Oh, God. But this fight, as they were, at that point in time, they thought each other to be enemies. This fight would actually be rather brutal and would leave both of them marked, so to speak. Cyclops lost one of his eyes to Wolverine, and Wolverine lost one of his hands to Cyclops. Okay, we're just going to see if we can... Come on. But, later on, Jean would, in fact, seemingly be killed in a mass breakout at the pits within Apocalypse's pits. A mass breakout that that she was helping Cyclops actually cause to happen. Ugh. This is kind of the more annoying thing when it comes to action figures. Is trying to find just that perfect way to balance them so that they can stand. Hey, there we go. I'm pretty sure if I look at her funny, she's gonna fall. Okay, alright. Anyway, so the build-up here of this line is the Sugar Man. We'll get to him once we open everyone else. So moving on to Weapon X. So we've talked a little bit about Jean Grey. So Jean was a featured character. First off, how was Age of Apocalypse was done in a manner where for 4 months every X-Men book was replaced by a new title. Wolverine was replaced with Weapon X. And at first the title starred him and Jean Grey. However, at the end of the second issue, Jean would return to try and help liberate the pits. So the last 2 issues were just focused on Wolverine. But yeah, and it was actually kind of a big surprise at the end of in the fourth. I want to say the fourth and final issue that the Wolverine could pop his claws even after having lost his hand. So we'll take a quick look at the figure, and yeah, that is why I kind of passed on this entire line in the first place. This head sculpt looks way too cartoony. If I remember correctly, the mutant tattoos are also more like a genetic thing. I think it's supposed to be kind of similar to the M that Bishop has over his eye. It's a similar thing that's done it's similar to what's done in Bishop's Future. So we've also got a spare stump, which is just the regular stump. And that can replace the stump with claws. I guess when he's going to be a pain in the ass to pose as well. This is all. I know for a fact that Wolverine was in the Giant Man Legends line years back. The Toy Biz Giant Man line, which is a Walmart exclusive, featured among others Wolverine from Age of Apocalypse as well as Sabretooth. And there was also a variant of Wolverine. There were a few points in the story where Wolverine got very badly burned, and there was one that was a kind of charred version. And I think the charred version also had his claws out on the stump. But when it comes to his Build-A-Figure piece, whereas Jean has the torso pieces, Wolverine comes with the left foot. Or left leg, I should say. Anyway, next up we've got Wild Child. So, Wild Child, for those who may be unaware of the character, which I presume would be most people that aren't maybe as well versed about comics, Wild Child is one of numerous feral mutants within the Marvel Universe. And, in fact, he was a member of, he's best known as being a member of Alpha Flight, the Canadian superhero team. He has been at various points, he's kind of gone all over the place, going from being almost completely feral to being cold, calculating, and whatnot. In fact, his appearances during Jeff Loeb's run on Wolverine back in the mid-2000s was much more the cold, calculating Wild Child. And we've also got kind of the back piece for Sugar Man. How this is going to work is we're going to crack open all these bad boys, and then once they're all cracked open, then we'll build a figure. Anyway, throughout the Age of Apocalypse, the first Age of Apocalypse stories, Wild Child is very much a sidekick to Sabretooth. Sabretooth in the Age of Apocalypse was in fact a something of a hero, actually. He was a member of the X-Men in good standing, and yeah. Alright. Yeah, he's got a little... But he was also almost always seen to be on a leash. This. Which was usually held by Sabretooth. And in a lot of ways, Sabretooth was much more similar to the regular universe Wolverine in Age of Apocalypse. It was, well, it's hard to explain. But kind of the fact that, for example, Wolverine has so many surrogate daughters, has all those various surrogate children, such as Shadowcat and Jubilee. That was actually something that, in the Age of Apocalypse, Sabretooth had going on more so than Wolverine. Wolverine was much more the loner he always claimed to be. Side note, the upcoming Age of Apocalypse, second Age of Apocalypse line will include a new Sabretooth, presumably who can hold Wild Child's chain. That said, in Age of Apocalypse, Wild Child was fairly unintelligent. And almost completely given over to his more feral instincts. If I remember correctly, it was kind of at least hinted that he had been experimented upon by Beast and or other scientists under the employ of that worked for Apocalypse. And his humanity was, what he had in the way of humanity was pretty much taken away by those experiments. I do have to admit, I'm impressed with how well they sculpted in the super 90s hairdos. Like the fact that Wild Child's hair, as well as Logan's hair, both have points that come over the face. Another interesting point to make is that Wild Child shows up currently in the Hellions ongoing, which if you watch my with the comic book roundups, you'd know I'm a huge fan. I'm actually quite the fan of the title actually, and in Hellions, which takes place in the regular Marvel universe, not the Age of Apocalypse universe. This is the outfit that Wild Child wears. And as per usual, we've got stiff joints. Got that feeling this is going to be a fun figure to pose. I don't have to constantly fight with. That looks to be the best we're going to get at the moment, at least until we've got Sabretooth to hold that chain. Anyway, moving on to our next figure, we've got Nate X-Man Gray. So one thing that that readers in the 90s kind of had to wonder, in the Age of Apocalypse, how would Cable be done? After all, all things considered, you kind of need his origin is rather particular. So there doesn't really leave a lot of room for a lot of wiggle room, So we got around that though. So all right, I'm gonna keep him. Fucking hell, Wild Child. Jesus Christ. Stay. Well, one thing to keep in mind, though, when it comes to Cable's origin is that Cable Nathan Christopher Summers was born to Madeline Pryor and Scott Summers, Madeline Pryor being a clone of Jean Grey, as a means of combining the Summers and Grey DNA to bring about an ultimate mutant that could take down Apocalypse. So, why was Jean Grey taken prisoner by Apocalypse's forces when they attacked the X-Men? because Mr. Sinister wanted her DNA. And while she was held prisoner, he extracted her DNA, combined with the DNA he had on hand of his son, his adopted son, Scott Summers, and he made a clone of sorts out of that collected genetic information. Now we've got two arms, one set of arms for Sugar Man. Sugar Man actually has 4 arms, so yeah, there aren't any extra arms. But Nathan would escape before Sinister's scheme could come to fruition, and he was in fact secretly raised. He was raised on the road by a traveling freak show that included Forge and various others. Now, one neat thing about X-Man is it kind of showed that kind of just how powerful Cable truly was. Because you have to keep in mind that, you know, Cable is actually an extremely powerful telekinetic and telepath. The only reason he doesn't show off his powers as much, is because he has to use them to keep his the technovirus, which causes him to have a glowing eye and cybernetic arm, in check. As I recall, the basic idea for why X-Man has a glowing eye is basically kind of a, you know, is more or less based on the idea that, you know, to show, hey, this is Cable. But also kind of a, you know, his mental powers are so powerful it causes one of his eyes to glow, which is a unique thing, and there are more powerful telepaths who don't have a glowing eye, but yeah. Let's see if I can get this sucker to stand. I will admit, I like the way the figure looks overall, especially the glowing eye, effect. Like I said, if I could just get him to stand, that would actually be great. I see the problem. Well, part of it at least. Anyway, X-Man was actually one of the 4 Age of Apocalypse versions to survive the Age of Apocalypse and come over to the regular Marvel Universe. His title would actually continue. His title would actually continue after the Age of Apocalypse. And the character would also continue just well after his title ended. having recently, in fact, just shown up in the few months before House of X and Power of the 10 came out back in 2019. He kind of sort of rewrote reality and called it the Age of X-Man, seemingly killing most of the mutant population. And moving on to our next figure, we've got Morph. Morph, if I remember correctly, is the Age of Apocalypse version of the character Changeling. There were those who thought that perhaps it was supposed to be kind of working the X-Men animated series character Morph into regular Marvel Comics. Because surprisingly the character was fairly popular with fans. I kind of blame it on the fact that, the first episode he's built up so much and he gets killed and we're like, what? But anyway, a similar version of Morph would show up in the he has Sugar Man's right leg. But a similar version of Morph would show up in the Exiles title when Exiles was kind of rebranded in the 2000s as a group of dimension hopping heroes. The leader of which was actually a character from the Age of Apocalypse, and upon seeing Morph in the first issue, she actually thought that she was dealing with her Morph because, well, they look exactly alike. The Exiles Morph, it turns out, had been a member of the Avengers as well as the X-Men, and had never met Blink. But Morph was very much the comic relief for the much-needed comic relief for the Age of Apocalypse titles. First try, not bad, actually. But, yeah, there's not much really to say about Morph. As I recall, he made it through the entirety of Age of Apocalypse. There were points where it seemed like he died, but apparently it's very hard to kill shapeshifters. Moving on to our next figure, we've got Sunfire. So I will straight up say this. That is my hands-down favorite Sunfire look of all time. Back in the days of Decimation, I was actually super stoked when Sunfire became a horseman, and that was how he ended up looking. And I kind of wish they kept that look for him, because holy shit, does it look awesome. So, Sunfire was experimented, as I recall, he had been experimented upon by Apocalypse's forces, namely Sinister and Beast, and that is why he looks the way he does in the Age of Apocalypse. But up until his more recent appearances in the just started X-Men title, this is probably the most, Age of Apocalypse Sunfire was in many ways like the most heroic version of the character seen to date. And we got the usual stiff shoulder joints and leg joints, ankle joints. Elbows, not so much. Same with the wrists. See how well he stands up. He is going to be a little top heavy with all the flaming accoutrements. It may not so much have been I don't think it was just him having been experimented upon, but he had been injured and taken prisoner by Apocalypse's forces, and they tried to make him one of their henchmen, but Sunfire managed to escape, and he became a member in good standing of the X-Men. Well, Magneto's X-Men. And I mentioned the older HeroClix sets that used Age of Apocalypse as a chase theme. The first one actually included Sunfire among them. And yes, I do have that figure. Funnily enough, never actually used it. I think it's mainly just kind of I have it just for, which is funny because I've used the Colossus. So I don't know why I haven't used the Sunfire. I should sometime. He looks badass. Even in HeroClix, he looks badass. Alright, so our last regular figure is the Dark Beast. So Dark Beast heavily featured in X Factor, or Factor X, which replaced X Factor. So Factor X, like I said, Factor X replaced X Factor, and he was in this reality, Henry McCoy was a student of Dr. Nathaniel Essex rather than Dr. Charles Xavier. And so he kind of got all the cruelty and malice of Sinister's experiments was taught to Hank McCoy. And of course he, much like his teacher, he experimented upon himself and ended up in his more bestial form. We also got Sugar Man's hammer, which says, if you see what says sugar on it. The Dark Beast was also a survivor of the Age of Apocalypse. That said, at first this wasn't entirely known. Oh boy. Lovely. The head came off as I was pulling out of the friggin' package. Lovely. Let's see if we can get this on there. But anyway, after Age of Apocalypse, well, in the concluding issue of the original Age of Apocalypse story, there we go. There was of course a massive revolution within the pen, within the pens, whatever you want to call them, at Apocalypse's fortress in New York, and quite a few of them who had been experimented upon by Beast, well, they weren't too happy about having been cruelly experimented upon, and, well, Beast tried to use his own personal teleporter to get out, but one of his former test subjects messed with the teleporter and changed the location, where he was to be teleported, and he had been teleported directly into the Mccoy crystal. Seemed that was the end of him. But it turns out that he simply ended up in the 20 years ago segment of Legion Quest, and as such, he did the smart thing. He hid out for years, eventually replacing his normal Marvel Universe counterpart for quite some time. He was eventually found out, and Beast was found, and the real Beast was found and replaced and brought back. Though Beast was a little pissed about things because, like, you couldn't tell that you didn't figure it out sooner. So anyway, Beast, accessory-wise, we've got an open left hand and a closed fist for the right hand. And here's what the figure looks like loose. Surprisingly, Beast does not have that many Legends figures. I'm not entirely sure if there's. I think there was a gray variant of Beast fairly recently. There was a point where regular Hank McCoy got turned gray due to further messing around with his furry form. And we got toe articulation. And the usual stiff joints. But Dark Beast ended up being being retconned into major X-Men continuity, as it turns out that it was his experiments that led to the Morlocks. For those unaware, the Morlocks being were a group of mutants living underground in New York who were all deformed largely because of their mutations. That said, the idea is that Sinister discovered them, saw the similarity to his own work, and thought, well, this is a poor imitation of my work, so it must be destroyed. Hence, the Mutant Massacre happened. Anyway, now let's put together our Build-A-Figure, shall we? Scooch everyone over a bit. Try to. Alright, hopefully that'll work for Wild Child. Probably can mess with them even more, else want to figure out where the hell we're putting them, but anyway. Alright, so we've got from Gene, we got kind of the front torso and the face. Okay, so who is Sugar Man? Sugar Man was another surviving character of the Age of Apocalypse. Also of note, he is, I think, the only character from Age of Apocalypse who has yet to have a mainstream Marvel analog. So the Sugar Man was in charge of one of the various pits, so to speak, that was run by Apocalypse and his forces. We got this. This is the back piece from Wild Child. In particular, it was the one that was holding Ilyana Rasputin. Left leg from Wolverine. Maybe, hopefully. Oh boy, this is going to be fun, I can already tell. But he has he has some some capabilities as a geneticist. In fact, when he came to the regular Marvel Universe, he actually basically went to Genosha and pioneered their gen engineering program. Alright, there we go. We got the other leg from, was it Morph? Yeah, it had to be. Anyway, but yeah, when he much like Dark Beast, he had stuck around in the Prime timeline in the shadows for decades. In fact, he only managed to get to the Prime timeline thanks to his size changing abilities, which allowed him to hitch a ride with Generation Next, or rather, with hitch right out of the pits with Colossus. Okay. All right. And he then followed Ilyana into the Mccoy crystal. All right, so yeah, Sunfire apparently came with the lower arms, his lower arms. That said, Sugar Man would end up getting killed off early on in the X-Men Disassembled arc of Uncanny X-Men, which led directly into the Age of X-Man. In fact, Bishop was investigating his death it was a B story within the first part of Disassembled. And then we got the hammer. I'm gonna lay your punk ass ass down for a moment so we can put this in your damn hand. Ugh. Well, that was a bit easier than entirely anticipated. Alright, and now we've got the Sugar Man. Way to go, you four-armed shithead. Being top-heavy and shit. Okay, to be fair, I don't really, when it comes to Build-A-Figures, I don't look at them so much when it comes to the, how stiff joints are, but the ankle joints seem a lot less stiff than with the other figures, and but the elbow joints and shoulder joints were just as stiff, and yeah. Anyway, it's a good-looking, ugly figure. Actually, it actually does very much, look. It is the character. As I mentioned previously, it's the cartoonish look of that Wolverine head that really turned me off of the line in the first place. If I hadn't started doing toy content, and there wasn't another Age of Apocalypse line coming down in a few months, I probably never would have gotten this way, to be perfectly honest. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook. You're going to be fun, I can already tell. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock and Roll Spock signing off saying, live long and rock hard.